Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB pro bodybuilder and owner of Tuttle Nutrition. Today's guest is Chris Tuttle. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, buddy. Welcome back. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So for all of you who are listening to this episode of Behind the Muscle, I just want to let you know this is round 2 with Chris. So if you kind of want to hear more about his story, how he got into bodybuilding, kind of the normal Behind the Muscle podcast episode, go back, check that out. Today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk about how Chris is transitioning in terms of being in retirement from bodybuilding. And we're going to just kind of talk some topics in terms of bodybuilding and nutrition. So again, this is going to be a little bit different episode. So if you want to hear more of Chris's story, make sure you go back to episode 1 in terms of our conversation to get that. Today's going to be a little bit different. So Chris, just kind of what we mentioned before we turn on the mic, I just kind of want you to talk about retirement, how that's going. I know you put a post on your Instagram here recently about cutting back on your eating, cutting back on your strength training, and yet you're still retaining that muscle mass. So why don't you just talk to us a little bit about that?
All right. Yeah. So I officially decided to stop bodybuilding pretty much around May 2021. May 2021 is when I decided to stop. And then it's been kind of slowly decreasing body weight at that time, going from 6 meals to 5 smaller meals. I mean, I'm talking much smaller meals. I mean, I was at 1,000 carbs a day, right? 6 meals a day. And then I was probably 5 meals a day, around 500 carbs, kind of just eating until I'm satisfied. Same foods, same format, letting the weight naturally kind of regress, not pushing it too hard in the gym, but I still kind of maintain that bodybuilding routine. And then, as many people might know, I started doing a little more boxing, and I was boxing only once per week then, and maybe twice for 30 minutes at my house. Then kind of just slowly regressed away from bodybuilding, a little bit less food. Obviously, many people don't understand that maintaining a large amount of muscle mass takes a lot of food. So going from 265 to 240 was pretty fast. I dropped that in probably, 4 months. And then I was at 240 for a long time, and I wasn't trying to be 240. I didn't care, just lifting totally for fun, normal routine, not pushing it too hard in the gym. I was kind of wanting to move more away from feeling stiff and uncomfortable, right? When you're really big, training really heavy, you're very, very stiff and uncomfortable. And I'm like, man, it'd be nice one day not to feel like that anymore at all, So obviously not going quite as heavy with certain particular lifts like leg day. I would be more doing split squats, lunges, lateral lunges, things to be more athletic, so to speak. But things got put on hold, went to Texas, got down to 235 at that point, really was training at that point only 3 days per week. And this was in August 2021. And then since I got here, weight's been steadily going down. But now, fast forward to now, I'm eating 4 meals a day. I eat about 60 grams of carbs per meal now only, about 15, 20 grams of fat per meal, about 45 grams of protein. And my weight's just stagnant around 218, 220. I box 4 days per week, and I only weight train twice per week. Usually it's time consuming, it's a time issue because I'm really prioritizing my business. Actually, I've always done that, but I have other business ventures I've been working on. So extra time has been kind of put towards that. And boxing's the priority over the weight training. So I'm going to miss weight training if I have a boxing session or want to get an extra one in. And it's honestly, a lot of people get nervous about getting smaller. Me getting muscular and lifting weights and choosing to bodybuild was never out of insecurity, was never out of anything but the love of bodybuilding. So luckily for me, it was kind of an easy transition, not to mention I had another goal in mind to substitute that with, right? Where some people, if they're leaving any type of sport and that's all they knew, and they're about to leave it because of injury or health, sometimes psychologically it's stressful, very anxiety driven, depression, because you really have to have something to replace it with. But I have other goals, other replacements. I could tell you that I absolutely love my life to death. Not the pressure of eating so much food, saving so much money, not eating so much food. My body feels so much better. It feels like I'm like 8 years younger, not carrying around all that weight. And not to mention, like, I can crawl down underneath my sink and fix a pipe without having to like take a breath or like try to struggle into there. So that's very nice. And my energy is endless. Like, I can get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I can cruise like a crazy person all the way to 11 o'clock at night and not even be sleepy once. So that's very new.
Why boxing? Why are you getting into that?
I think you froze for 1 second.
Can you hear me or? Oh, can you hear me, Chris, or not?
I see.
There we go.
Yeah. Could you see me the whole time?
No, you left and you came back. So
Yeah, it froze there for a second.
yeah, that's okay. We'll just keep going. No big deal. So why boxing? Why did you just choose to get into that?
Boxing is something that I've always wanted to do. And not to mention, jiu-jitsu is really exciting to me and takes interest, but my knees are not in good shape. Okay. Into standards of like being able to roll around the ground quickly or be slammed. So I really don't want to get hurt. All right. I can get hit in the face. I'm okay with that. Right. But when it comes to like hurting a shoulder, tearing a tendon, rupturing a tricep, I'm not interested in that. Maybe if I get lighter and I'm able to be more mobile, I'd be entertaining the idea of jujitsu. But the idea of boxing, being on my feet, learning how to move and how to counter, and boxing is like a chess game, right? It's when people understand boxing, it's about the setup, it's about understanding your opponent, their weaknesses, the repetitions, and I find that exciting. Not to mention, it's an ultimate physical challenge. I know people who are listening to this who have legitimately boxed before understand, but I mean, boxing's brutal, especially coming from an anti-athletic bodybuilder to trying to get in the ring with people who are like 200 pounds for a sparring match. Like, they run circles around me at 240. I was just getting so tired so quickly. People forget that when you're bigger, your ability to fight greatly decreases because you can't move. 1, 2, and you get tired really quickly. So if you're slow and you get tired really quickly, you're useless after about 45 seconds. So I found that out in boxing real quick, but I love it. I'm learning quickly. I'm starting to see things. So it's nice to learn something new, and it's physical. I have to do something physical.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to ask you, now that you've been retired for a while, you probably had a little time to think about it. And then obviously all the different clients that you have, I want to ask you about training. I know from our previous conversation and following you on social media for quite a while, like you were kind of like the old school training and took it all out. Looking kind of back, is there anything that you would maybe adjust in terms of your training style or methodology that maybe you would want to share with anybody listening today?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously everybody who can always look back at their younger years and think about something they would do differently, right? Only if we knew our younger selves. But I could say starting bodybuilding when I did, I feel in comparison today was a huge disadvantage because coaching wasn't a thing yet. Instagram, Facebook wasn't a thing yet. The whole camaraderie online, learning new coaches, tactics of training, getting exposed to different philosophies didn't exist. It was just looking up articles on bodybuilding.com, Flex magazine, and most of your resources and information was just as good as the people in your gym. So like I learned posing from people in my gym. Knowledge about where to go to even sign up for a show was people in my gym. So obviously, as many people were listening who go to their gym, could you imagine being your gym as your only resource? So a lot of it was just trial and error. And I just wish that I knew tactically how to approach training and nutrition, because I feel like I'd be much further along. But one thing I fundamentally wish I did differently, two main things, is one, I trained much smarter in regards to listening to my body, because I ignored a lot of pain in my knees, the lower back, and all I cared about was just lifting heavier and heavier and heavier, which obviously in today's day and age, we know that's not the only goal. It doesn't work that way. And the other thing is, I wish I was more consistent when it mattered. I took a hiatus from bodybuilding almost completely for 2 full years. And that's 2 full years in my 20s that would have been extremely valuable in terms of putting on size when I was injury free. It's like I had to finish school, and that was important, my internship and everything like that. And I had the choice, but I still could have stuck with it more. I got into strongman training for a little while, and I can't believe I had the no pain, aches and pains to be able to do that. And I did, and that was fun, but there's a lot of time wasted just doing young, immature kid shit, which I should have just really focused on all that one thing when you have your body. Because people who are listening to this are in their 20s, you guys don't get it, that once your 20s are gone, your youthful body's gone. It's not going to respond the same. Your recoverability from injury is just shot. You get a knee pain in your mid 30s, that might not go away for a year. You get knee pain when you're 19, it's gone in 24 hours, you know? So that's kind of one fundamental thing that is totally different. Your body just loses that durability. It doesn't bounce back like it did. And your ability to overcome injuries just decreases. So that time in the 20s, I feel like I did waste a little bit. Kind of being a kid, I guess you could say, being young, trying to figure things out. But I really do wish I changed that. That's probably number one.
Cool. Very cool. So I want to ask you about something that is, kind of a hot topic in terms of bodybuilding, competing, and that's kind of post-show, what's called, the rebound, right? There's a lot of different philosophies. There's a lot of different talk about that. What's your personal philosophy about, rebounding post-show? And I want to kind of tie that into taking time off after a bodybuilding contest prep, because I feel like, a lot of people are like, man, as soon as they're done competing, they've been through a full prep. It's always very rigorous. It's like, I got to get right back into the gym to get this rebound. But then, I think it's also very important, take some time off for the mental aspect and the body and all of that. So what's your perspective on that? And just maybe dig deep a little bit on that, Chris, please.
Yeah, I've fallen into that mistake many times. Get out of the show. You're so emotionally motivated. And obviously, as many people might know, when you're emotionally motivated, it's usually you make poor decisions. You don't see things at face value. You go through prep shitting on your body. You're in very, very low body fat. You're pushing, trying to get to that peak. And then you get off show and you're just dying to grow again. And people take that emotion and they just go, no, I'm going to start now. And the biggest mistake is your ability to gain muscle actually, within the 8 weeks post show is actually incredibly low. And people don't understand that. What people are seeing is the rebound in fat and water. And it makes them think like they're gaining muscle, because they go from feeling depleted, possibly weaker or the same strength, to influx in their body with water, sodium, all the minerals and carbohydrates. Their body's blood volume expands, massive full pump muscles. They're up 15 pounds, but they're still lean because it takes time for body fat to come on. That blood volume is so high, making those muscles look so big. And they're like, man, this rebound's amazing. I'm getting bigger. You're not getting bigger. 11 weeks later, you're going to be fat, flat, and you're going to feel achy because you gained too much weight too quickly. You're training too much, too heavy after all that prep, and you're going to be in a much worse position for your entire off season. The best way to gain it is your rebound. People feel it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 weeks, depending how you play it. However, you can extend that rebound to much larger scale when your body's actually ready. So if you spent the 8 weeks post show dropping all your gear out, either coming off completely or doing your hormone replacement, a true home replacement, you back off training, you stop training to failure, focus on recovery, fatigue, start rebuilding your relationship with food, progressively getting calories back in there, or going right back to your last known maintenance calories and then adjust from there, because you're going to get probably 8 to 10 pounds of body weight gain right away within that first 10 days. And then after that, it should be a gradual increase. But you want to kind of maintain a more leaner look. You don't want to be putting on 5 pounds every week after week after week after week post show. You want to maintain that appetite, keep that body fat low, keep the insulin sensitivity high, get your labs back in check, get your body refreshed. But all of a sudden you get 10 weeks post show and your hunger's great. You're still in good shape. Training's awesome. You're fully recovered. Joints are perfect. And now your body's going to be in a great setup, health-wise, physical-wise, mental-wise, to push again. And you can extend that rebound, if you play it right, for 20 weeks. And it's going to be much better. I do that with my clients now. Everybody grows much better. Everybody's in a much better situation and all around. But a lot of people, young, impatient, emotional decisions, not going to listen because they hear about all these stories of people gaining so much weight. But there's solid research showing this. I know Lane Norton had a bunch of information about natural bodybuilders coming after a show, and the almost all the weight gain the first 10 weeks is just water and fat, injured triglycerides, in the muscles and the blood volume. And people don't understand, that concept. It sounds great on paper. And the thing is, they feel it, the muscles, and they're like, my pump is huge. This is the time to grow. It's actually not. You're be so much better if you play your cards right. You got to look at the long game. Don't look at the short game. I've made that mistake so many times. It was really funny is one time, coincidentally, I finished a show and I didn't place well and I was upset. So I was like, man, I'm going to get back at it, but I had to focus on school, which made me take this approach. I was training every other day and came down all the way down to TRT, and then eventually came off for 4 weeks, for 6 weeks. I did TRT for 4 weeks and then came off for 6 weeks. And I was training every other day. And I didn't probably cheat really at all because I was kind of pissed off at the placing. Just kept really regimented. And then when I restarted again, everything getting back into bodybuilding in the off season, I was so strong and I was so ready. My appetite was good. Digestion was perfect. And I stayed really, really lean. And then that was probably one of the best off seasons I've ever had. And I put in so much less effort, but I just played the cards right. You know what I mean? Just coincidentally.
100%. So let's transition into talking about the off season, because I think that's something else, especially with the younger athletes. They want to just, get shredded and step on the stage. How important is it for progression in bodybuilding to have a great off season? And what should a proper off season or a great off season for an athlete look like, Chris?
Yeah, so off season, I think, is where most people struggle with. All right. And the reason is it's very difficult it's much more exciting to run a sprint than it is to run a marathon, right? Marathon's very long. Bodybuilding in the off season is like an ultra marathon. Getting ripped is super easy compared to putting on muscle, because one, when you have a prep, you have an end date, you see that date, coming, it's closing, you're motivated to stay on track, you don't want to miss a beat. Off season, you don't necessarily have this set goal where you have to be on stage in skivvies. So people tend to be inconsistent. That's one problem. Two, some people are uncomfortable with eating a lot of food on a regular basis every day. Three, people have difficulty being as consistent because they go, well, if I'm not in prep now, I have a lot of leeway. You have some leeway. You have to treat it like prep, but you're just eating more food. Yeah, you can eat meals off plan here or there within reason and make it work within your program and your coach, but it's not something like, oh, I'll just train later today, or I'll just do this, or I'll just do that, lackadaisy. Man, getting muscle is not easy. You have to dedicate everything together and treat off season like it's a contest prep, and not be afraid to gain a little body fat. And that's one thing with social media, having to look a certain way, don't want to be bloated. Everybody's like, got to take a bunch of Primo and Tren and not take any tests, and then take Clen at the same time and eat a bunch of food and grow. That's why so many people are not making any gains, because they're trying to look that image, but they're not putting in the work in the off season to grow. And really important. It's beyond important. All the years that I dedicated like full effort, as I would in prep in the off season, I jumped about 10 pounds of stage weight. Any year that I didn't, and I was personally slacking off, or I had things going on, vacations, and I couldn't stick to this, I couldn't stick to that, got sick or injured, I didn't make hardly any gains. And that's one thing that really people don't understand. Even my clients now, them in the off season, they're like, "Wow, I've never treated an off season like this before. Never been this consistent, but it's paying off." Off season is hard, and I think most people do need to coach in the off season just for the accountability, because making sure they're not getting too fat, and two, making sure they're on their ball every week with your training. And most important is, on the off season, training has to be performance based. If you're not steadily increasing your performance in the gym, whether that be more reps for the same weight or more weight for the same reps, you're not changing. And that has to be monitored. Training has to be monitored, like nutrition has to be monitored. Kind of doing the whole free-flowing training, I just train how I feel, I just go into the gym that day and decide what I want to do, that only takes you so far. And then eventually at that point, you're going to have to really make some adjustments and really crack down and monitor your training like you'd monitor someone's nutrition. There's no way around that. There's not a lot of people that can just freely, willy-nilly just do whatever in the gym, especially at a high level. That's not going to happen for sure.
Talk to us a little bit. I know we did this on your previous episode because you've had some digestive issues in your life and career, but the more and more I learn, like, digestion really is everything in terms of performance in the gym, putting on muscle. So talk about optimizing digestion, kind of however you want to take that, please, Chris.
Yeah, so in bodybuilding, I think that one of the biggest issues that's driving the digestive issues is a few factors, right? So the combination really I see in people's diets who have that is, obviously there's some type of family history, right? Not everybody has IBS like symptoms when they get super stressed out. Some people do not have any digestive issues at all when they're super stressed, but there's a lot of people that do, okay? So you have that susceptibility in that family. Two, overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system. When you're training really heavy and hard, you're stimulating your sympathetic nervous system, which is a requirement. There's no way around it to be able to progress. But bodybuilders are also taking a lot of androgens. Androgens do stimulate the sympathetic nervous system as well, like trenbolone. Pre-workouts, overdoing stimulants, where your body is in too much to that sympathetic nervous system side of the spectrum too much of the day, not in that rest and digest mode. And then they're combining large quantities of protein and white rice. And now, obviously, there are fundamental parts that are easy to get down and easy to eat, but the diet is lacking variety that helps feed the healthy gut microbiome in the large intestine. So, like, you got to feed those healthy gut bacteria, because if your diet is too limited for too long, your body's ability to break down food will decrease. Just like people are familiar with the FODMAP diet. FODMAP diet is used for people with IBS. It's designed to narrow down specific foods that are trigger foods for that individual, which removes a lot of foods, unfortunately, that are very high in prebiotics, which feed the healthy gut flora. And the reason they say they limit the use of that FODMAP diet is because eventually you can lead to deficiencies and affect your digestion on a worse level. So the first thing to do is figure out your trigger foods, and then you introduce some prebiotic rich foods that are tolerable back into the diet to optimize digestion. And that's the biggest thing. And I get so many diets that are full of Pop-Tarts, white rice, beef, sloppy Joe mix, chicken. I don't eat vegetables because they don't like vegetables, or they just don't want to eat vegetables. They don't eat fruits because they're afraid of sugar, but yet they're eating muffins. It doesn't make any sense to me. And their diet is just absolute garbage. I have quite a bit of clients now with digestive that come to me just for digestive health. And looking at their diet, it's always the same thing. And a lot of the times, they focus too much on the carb and the protein, and they're not paying attention to healthy and anti-inflammatory fats. So usually those individuals, digestive tract, I end up kind of bringing their carbs down significantly, maybe even down to 50% sometimes, and replacing about 30% of the calories I decreased in fats, and then working their carbs back up again to help their digestive tract, because it's just gobs and gobs and gobs of white rice, with no healthy fats, no fruits, no fiber, no prebiotic rich foods. It's a disaster in the long run. It really is. But I haven't had anybody where I wasn't able to assist them or improve their digestion based on those simple facts alone. And that's one thing. And one thing I really need to understand too is once your gut heals, inflammation goes down, your ability to digest food becomes greater. In other words, I had ulcerative colitis. Last colonoscopy I had no signs of ulcerative colitis anywhere. And now to this current day, most foods that I couldn't eat when I was bodybuilding, I can eat now. I don't have any problems. I have zero because my gut microflora is healthy again. Stress in my body's not there. So my ability to digest broccoli and pizza, I can do it now. 2 years ago, I'd be a mess for like 4 days, but that's kind of how it goes, man. It's a combination of that, the genetics pushing the body too much in the sympathetic nervous system side, and the diet being deficient what it needs to feed that healthy gut microflora, and they just don't have that variety due to convenience, appetite, etc. But the more people understand is the more balanced that diet is in the long run, you're going to be able to maintain a much better appetite, and you're going to be able to maintain healthier digestion. You can't just throw probiotics and digestive enzymes at it. It doesn't work. That's totally a Band-Aid. It really is,
100%. Also, I mean, if an athlete is on gear, that's obviously going to mess some things up with the digestion and your gut health as well, correct?
Yeah, 100%. So one thing people do notice, not everybody, obviously you always have the outliers, and obviously when you're young, nothing's ever wrong with you. It's more like the older guys, late 20s, 30s, 40s, is that when you come off gear, people's appetite ends up going way up. They're like, man, my appetite's hungry. I can eat everything. And then they sleep better, right? Because gear, androgens, high androgens do affect your sleep because you are kind of on that stimulating that anxiety, sympathetic nervous system side, which also affects digestion. So when you do lower the gear, your digestion does improve, your appetite does improve, your sleep does improve. And that's where it comes and lies with androgen selection, like what gear you're going to select for the off season. And I know people quickly run to Trenbolone all the time because it looks wonderful on paper, but it really isn't great for off season. It really isn't for that main reason. Most people cannot tolerate Trenbolone in the off season and get good gains. They're strong. They're like, yeah, I'm strong. You're keeping body fat low. But as far as like pure solid ass gains, I'm not seeing it. And a lot of the people that I know, they're way better than me as the bodybuilder and bigger, always said the same thing. They stay with the most basic crap, because if you can't sleep, you can't maintain digestion, you're not going to progress. Even if that drug looks perfect on paper, it rarely just translates into everyday life exactly how it states. It's just not. And not to mention, you always have the individuality response of every person.
For sure. One other question in terms of kind of gut health here before we move on. What about like doing some sort of intermittent fasting or just fasting? I know with bodybuilders, like not getting their 5 or 6 meals in a day is like, just that's not going to happen. But from my own personal experience, and then just, the research out there, I mean, especially in the off season, I mean, taking like a break, maybe from just one meal, or giving your digestion like a 12-hour break. Do you see some benefits with that as well, Chris?
Yeah, so intermittent fasting can mean so much, right? It's like, I don't think any bodybuilder should be fasting for 24 hours, right? But I mean, implementing some type of 16-hour or 12-hour fasts could be beneficial if there's a problem. I like to use methods and tactics to address an issue, not just to implement things, just to implement things. Kind of like when people implement deloads every 2 weeks when they don't necessarily need a deload every 2 weeks, right? So like they're implementing the deload when their body is required for a deload. If you're having bowel issues and it's severe inflammation, then obviously implementing bowel rest is a good idea. Following a low residue diet, maybe bringing meals to 4 meals a day, fasting for 16 hours for 2 days to allow that bowel rest to kick off that healing process. Because in the hospital, when you have severe diverticulitis and you have a flare up, or even ulcerative colitis, you flare up, you're NPO, nothing by mouth, for like for 24 to 48 hours sometimes. And then you start implementing clear liquids and then you go low residue diet, then you progress back to regular diet. So in bodybuilding in those scenarios, sometimes that's a good method. However, there's not a lot of people that are going to do that, right? They're more likely going to follow low residue diet, which is no dairy, low fiber, maybe reduce the carbohydrate load on the intestinal tract to get it to recover, because what you're after with intermittent fasting in regards to digestion is bowel rest, giving a break for a moment. But I think in the off season, if I'm learning this more now this year than anything, is, even cycling low and high carb days and for the purpose of gaining mass versus just linearly having more calories every day and increasing, that psychologically reduces the burden of seeing that high food every day. And also you're kind of more or less keeping insulin sensitivity alive, keeping appetite alive, not bombarding the digestive tract all the time. And it gives you a chance to learn your body. You could be like, man, on leg day, my appetite's terrible. Well, then sure as shit, you shouldn't be eating the most calories on leg day. Maybe the day before leg day, maybe the day after leg day. So that gives a chance to learn your body in that aspect. But digestion, I can tell people, it's extremely individual. I have tons of general population clients who have ulcerative colitis, and it's not like they're the same diet across the board. They're very individual for that person's response,
Very cool. I want to ask you about just like generic supplements, not PED supplements, but are there like some supplements, and this is maybe more for the beginners out there, are there some supplements, like glutamine, creatine, whatever, BCAAs, are there some supplements that you just kind of recommend if you're starting out, that, hey, these are some supplements that you should look into taking just to kind of help your progress?
Yeah. So, I mean, I really recommend supplements based on the individual's lack thereof, so to speak, what they're deficient in or what the particular goal is. But I mean, I put almost everybody on a vitamin D. We're inside all day long. We're not outside playing, especially compared to now the 90s, So vitamin D is number one. Number two, if they're looking for performance enhancement, the best performance enhancing supplement that's over the counter is going to be creatine. There's no question. For general gut health, glutamine and curcumin, Phytozone by Jarrow. Those two, obviously, glutamine helps heal the endothelial lines of the intestinal tract, helps them maintain that mucosa lining that's healthy for you. But you got to take it fasting. It's better to take it fasting if you're using for that purpose. And curcumin's been shown to alleviate some sort of side effects of people with ulcerative colitis, which I found a big difference with that as well, up to 1,000 milligrams a day. That's for like digestive health. As far as probiotics and digestive enzymes, most people do not need them unless there is a antibiotic treatment going on, or if I suspect that their whole gut microflora might be trashed, and say they are not at the level where they're going to be able to tolerate things that are high in prebiotics as foods, I might implement a probiotic prebiotic combination supplement for a period of time and then kind of wean them off of that and get them on foods. And digestive enzymes can potentially help sometimes in regards to large quantities of food, just help the body digest the food. But I would never use that to solve a problem, because that's not the solution, right? Eventually that's still not going to work anymore. And then as far as like lipids, I think the best supplements, citrus bergamot, red yeast rice, but not all red yeast rice is created equal. So I got to be careful with that recommendation, because the amount of statin that's in red yeast rice varies from company to company. NAC, I think, is wonderful. 600 milligrams twice a day. And in regards to energy, I have people, general population, who have low energy, and I can't figure out why. Hey man, try this. A week later, they're like, dude, I feel great. It's like, it's a wonderful thing. And I've seen firsthand multiple times with clients, liver enzymes drop with supplementing NAC. I actually haven't seen liver enzymes drop with myself or other people with milk thistle. I've seen no difference, but NAC, for whatever it is, seems to do the trick. TUDCA, I know it has wonderful marks, but I haven't seen the positive effects. And I don't know as much about it in personal experience or with clients as I do with NAC for liver health.
Very cool. So I want to talk a little bit, transition into kind of like coaching in terms of what are some of the kind of the when you have a new competitor come to you, maybe they've had a previous coach or something like that. What are some of the things that you're seeing on a consistent basis in terms of, like way too low calories, or, what are some of those issues, or I don't want to say malfunctions, but what are some of the things that you're seeing in terms of, we'll just use the word issues, of clients that are coming to you on a regular basis that are competitors that you're like, man, I can't believe your coach was having you do that?
Drugs are out of control, like way out of control. And even for a beginner, an amateur, even middleweight, taking like 1,700 mgs of testosterone a week, it's just like, who comes up with this? Like, it's just mind-boggling, absolutely mind-boggling. And they have this persona and belief in their mind that this is what they have to do, which couldn't be further from the truth. And it's only going to hurt their health long term. It's going to shorten their life. And it's a disaster to try to break the dogma surrounded by, oh, this is what it takes kind of mentality, which is very unfortunate. The other one is too much protein. Like, there's a lot of people who are middleweights, light heavyweights, eating 400 grams of protein a day. You don't need 400 grams of protein a day if you're walking on the off season at 180. That's insane. Not to mention, even myself, when I was 265 pounds, I was eating 285 grams of protein, and I was growing constantly. So that's overplayed. And then the other, I would say the biggest one now I see more frequently, or maybe I'm becoming more and more aware of it, is training deficit. Too much junk volume, just doing sporadic sets of just extra things just for no reason. They don't have a set plan. And their execution is extremely poor. So they might be doing incline dumbbell press, but they're like, oh, I'm feeling it in my shoulders. Well, you shouldn't be feeling it in your shoulders. Now, why are you feeling it in your shoulders? Or they're stuck with these certain set of exercises just because they think that's deemed the best back builder, but they're not feeling it all in their back, but they're still doing it. So the training intensity is just not there. The training direction, the training execution, I would say all in all, the training's the biggest deficit in that now. Anybody can take drugs. Anybody can eat a lot of food, but the training is a huge, huge, huge missing piece. Huge. And it's very hard to teach it through the internet, right? Besides showing somebody in person or trying to demonstrate it. That's the most difficult thing I have. I have my clients send me video clips, and then we can adjust how they're doing certain movements. But I always tell people, it's not what exercise you do in the gym, it's how you do that exercise. If you do the exercise correctly, it can be extremely effective with just 3 sets. If you're kind of just moving weight around mindlessly, point A to point B, and you're just pumping out reps, you could probably do 4 exercises and not be that fatigued because you're just moving weight. But you're also driving up overall body fatigue and wear and tear in the body by just weightlifting,
I want to go back to the drug thing again, because that's what I kind of hear again and again and again with different people that are talking. Like I don't think there's a solution, but from your perspective, what can we do in the bodybuilding community to kind of get some of these younger people that are just getting into the game to understand that drugs aren't the answer? Like, do you have any ideas or any words of wisdom to share, Chris?
Honestly, I don't know. I think social media has kind of lit that fire, because back in the day, it was word of mouth. It was learning from the guy at the gym. And then now, if you get one dummy on the internet being like, this is what I took to get this big, now you're going to have millions of eyes look at that person and be like, that's what they took to get that big. And then you're going to have somebody else who either got bigger or the same size on half of as much. And then everybody else is going to be like, oh, he's lying. Because they can't understand and conceivable being like, well, how do you get double the pain relief with, 5 Advil, and this guy's getting, less pain relief with twice as much Advil as he's taking, right? It doesn't make sense to the brain because they don't understand how much more components it is than just taking drugs. Dude, it's hard. I don't foresee it getting better. I foresee it getting worse. I foresee many more deaths occurring. I mean, there's already been 50, 60 deaths at a low amateur local level. that people never hear about outside of the bigger people who passed away, you know?
Mhm.
So it's a tough one. I mean, like, dude, this is a message I got the other day, and I get these messages all the time. And part of it, I think, I'm not to rip on society today, but I kind of am, is the mentality is just so different. There's not a lot of work ethic with younger generation. So here's a kind of questions I get. I'm looking to get lean. What gear should I take? I have problem losing fat because I'm not disciplined enough to diet correctly. I just want to eat 300 plus calories and get lean and get bigger. Also, where do you think I should get gear from? Like, I get these questions all the time, and no matter what you tell that person, they're gonna find the person that tells them what they want to hear. But the problem is that person does things incorrectly, gets results, posts about it. You get new guys who come about, they go, oh, that's what he did, I'm going to follow. And then you get somebody like me or Fuad or anybody who mentions something otherwise, and they go, oh, you guys are lying. It's a tough situation, you know. And one thing I love more than anything is when I worked with Chris Aceto, he had me use probably 50% of what I used in previous years. And I had the same exact results, if not better. I actually felt better. Sleep was better, training was better. It was just better. And like, obviously I trust Jose Raymond, I trust Evan. And I'm like, dude, is Aceto messing with me? Is he joking with me, or is he serious? And he goes, no, just follow it. He's serious. So he made me a believer. And I was always a conservative person to begin with, and I've always been cautious. It's just sad because people don't want to put in the work. They want that shortcut. And when you're young, you don't care. Think about it. When we were young and our parents were like, dude, slow your roll there, sport. We're like, whatever, dad, whatever gets me there as fast as possible. And we're not thinking about later in life, but that is going to be a ginormous regret, because I know a lot of people now in their 40s who contacted me and they say they regret ever bodybuilding ever because they had their first heart attack, or their joints are destroyed, their testicular functions destroyed, they can't have children. There's these things out there. There's always oh, he has 6 kids, he's healthy, he's 60 years old. But you know what? Just like with smoking cigarettes, there's people that live to be 90 smoking 2 packs of Lucky Strikes, right? And then there's people that die of lung cancer in 5 years. So it's a tough one to do. Only thing you could do is continuously try to educate. Luckily, I had the reputation, so a lot of my clientele that come to me already know that, and they're coming to me for that reason.
Great point. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. I want to just talk a little business because, that's a huge focus of yours right now and your wife. So talk a little bit about Chris. Obviously, you have the education, which separates you from a lot of these people that are out there in terms of coaches on the internet. But in terms of like scaling your business, how are you going about that? And just talk about maybe some of the lessons you've learned about having an online business, coaching online. Talk a little bit about the growth over the last year or so.
All right. So we are at our peak. My wife and I have been at our peak since summer 2018. We've been at our peak summer 2018, meaning we've had a relatively wait list since 2018. So that's been our peak, meaning we can't possibly physically take on any more clients unless we hired somebody to work underneath us, which we're really not interested in. I don't want to be that business model. Not that I have anything against it. It's just not my forte. My whole business has been organic from the start. I never intended to be a coach working at home. I never intended to have this business. This was all by organically occurring, from all starting in 2005 with somebody asking me to help them with their prep because I did well with my own prep. I dieted myself. I helped him. He did well. His friend asked him, what happened? He helped me. Can he help me? Yeah, sure. Give me $50. I'll help you. He did well. Then his friend asked. And then it was just building up over time to the point where I was having so many clients like, wow, I'm working like 30 hours outside of my normal job. Maybe I should just quit my job. And then it just progressively built. But I always tried to do the right thing with everybody. And I always try to give everybody the same attention. I try to do the best I can with everybody. I truly do. I truly care about my clients. I've never advertised. I don't market. And it's gotten to the point we are now. I've never tried to scale anything, right? I just try to do what I can with each person. And lucky, I've gotten to where I am organically just by doing that. I think one of the fundamental things that I think people don't do to their coaching business, what they should do, is if you have integrity and people know you really care and you really do put in honest effort with everybody, people are going to know that. Even if that person does well or not, they're going to know that. Because I've had people I worked with that didn't do great, but they end up referring like 5 people to me because I did what I could with that person, whether they were happy with the results or not, and they knew I tried my best, right? And then the other thing is putting in the work. Like I've been working now 12-hour days, 6 days a week for years, for almost 4.5, 5 years now. It's like my wife and I have probably maybe 5 full days off per year, like where we don't even answer our phone or computer. And that's fine and all if people don't want to do that, but that's what it took to get here, and to bring it to the scale. But now at this point, in this juncture, I just stopped taking on clients for a while now. Nobody knew. I have a pending wait list that I'm slowly working over, but eventually I'm going to scale back and kind of live a more normal life of maybe 50 hours a week, not 75, and then go from there. And also constantly learn. That's one thing that is real different from a lot of people. Like they get stuck in their low carb dieting and that's all they do. I try to learn to be better all the time, right? I still do education myself. I've read Lane Norton's books. I took John Jewett's program. Like if there's 2 or 3 tidbits I can learn from one book, it works. If there's a book that I think might be, people say below me, and I read a book and I read the whole entire thing, and there's something in that book that changes my perspective, and I carry that back to my clients, and boom. I mean, last year was my best year with clients winning overalls. Had my client Jordan win the overall USAs, which is, that's the best my clients' levels ever done. I've done the best I ever did with all my clients. And I attributed that to a change in perspective, right? My tactics have changed and I'm learning to see things differently. And I'm still doing that now, and that's where I think a lot of people don't do. They're either afraid to look stupid, so they don't want to ask another coach. Man, I have conversations with John Jewett all the time, and I talk to different coaches to learn. Hey, man, do you guys ever have this situation? And they'll be like, yeah, what I found out is this. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't see it that way. And then I go back and be like, you know what? Let's give that a shot. And sure enough, in that situation, it worked. You can never stop learning and keep learning. And the funniest thing is, being as coaching as long as I have been, I feel like I know less now than I did 8 years ago, right? Because you start to realize, wow, there's just so much to learn and there's so much more to learn. When you first start doing something, you're like, this is my world. I know everything. And all of a sudden this world gets huge and you're like, I don't know shit. So that's kind of where people, I think, make mistakes, where they're just kind of stuck in that first gear. Sometimes you need to ask somebody's help to kind of shift gears.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Are you kind of staying current with what's going on in the bodybuilding world? Do you have any predictions for the Arnold, or are you kind of just focus on business?
But I've been really focused on business. I mean, I listen to Fuad all the time. I listen to RX Muscle sometimes, just a little bit here and there. Not following. I don't know what anybody looks like, if that's what you're saying. I'm not following closely to the point where like so-and-so has been progressing each week. I have no idea in that regard. I mean, I don't know how Brandon Curry is not going to win, but that's just based on his own prior stats. But who knows today? You get a lot of upcomers. You got Brett coming in, and but it's, who knows, man? Who knows?
What do you think about Brett Wilkins' physique?
He's great physique. He's great physique. I think the physiques now are starting to transform more for the good. I believe the whole keeping the waist smaller, because I know a lot of top guys are getting away from using insulin. I know insulin's starting to become on more dying out. and metformin's kind of popping in, and other methods are being used to kind of more maintain your body's natural insensitivity instead of just combating insensitivity with just absurd insulin use and crazy amount of food that your body couldn't possibly absorb anyway. That's my belief in it. But I think the quality of physiques is starting to improve, like especially keeping the waist small,
Yeah. And I think we're starting to see a lot of the training going back to more of like the old school training. You see a lot of these guys now. I mean, Brett's a perfect example, Chris, of just like balls to the wall training, compound movement. So I think that has a lot to do with it too. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. It's funny. It's like people start to shy away from the basics because they associate things that are complicated and scientific with effectiveness, when sometimes complication does not in any means bring it down a more effective route, besides possibly even more complicated route where it's going to take you further away from it. Simple works. And unfortunately, people keep trying to reinvent the wheel to look fancy, to market themselves, to show, hey, this is different. When in reality, it's the same shit. I remember Jake Cutler in one video saying, he's like, man, people keep asking me like, hey, what's your favorite routine or your exercises, or how would you change your routine over the years? He's like, I pretty much did the same exact routine for like 20 years. Same number of exercises, same chest exercises, just progressing the weight and reps in them. Is you keep it simple. You don't need to do these like weird concepts. Bringing in like, weird angles and situations and training stuff, I think has a place when someone's injured, right? You're going to utilize more reverse bands on a bench press if you're recovering from a pec injury, besides just implementing all these different situations just for the hell of it,
For sure. All right, Chris, we're gonna end it there. Why don't you share with everybody the Instagram, if they do want to reach out to you, connect with you, where can they find you guys on Instagram?
All right. Well, currently I got kicked off Instagram because apparently I was impersonating myself. So I'm trying to get my Instagram back, which was IFBB Pro Chris Tuttle, but now I'm just running off my business page, which is Tuttle Nutrition. And my wife is Alexia Tuttle, and my business is TuttleNutrition.com for a website. I'm also working on a water enhancer, mineral-based water enhancer called More. So we're still kind of in the middle of really finalizing our flavor and our mineral base, because obviously you change mineral content, you change flavor. So we're trying to find that perfect flavor. It's kind of more in lines of, say, a Mio, but better with added minerals, and not to mention a way better taste. But we're in the middle of that right now.
And so they can kind of find that information. You guys will put that out on like your website and Instagram, I'm assuming.
Yep. And we have already one Drink More. It's on Instagram already. You can kind of get a brief idea of it, but it's still real in the starting phases.
Okay, cool. All right, Chris. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man, and chopping up. Hopefully we'll plan on doing this again, maybe in 6 months, but really appreciate your time. Okay.
You got it. Awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, thank you so much. 2 quick things: hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you share this episode on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Chris. Go ahead, tag Behind the Muscle so that we know you listened to this episode and found great value in it. Appreciate you guys. We'll catch you guys later.
Awesome. Thank you.